welcome to Destination I Do's podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Stein. And if you have been wondering what to look for when scouting your wedding venue, this is the episode for you because, quite honestly, we probably should have had this topic a long, long time ago. It's one of the most important things that you are going to be making a decision on when it comes to your destination wedding. And I have a special guest today, Natalia Mangieri, Destination Sales Executive at the Westin Michigan Avenue in Chicago. And she has a degree from DePaul University. She also has, and she got her BA in public relations, right? And advertising, and an MA in digital communication and media arts. Girl, you could probably be doing my job right now. She's had all sorts of experience and knew she wanted to be in hospitality. She now works for Marriott. And so thank you so much, Natalia. I'm so glad you're on the show with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
And before we started recording, you mentioned that you've also kind of been on the planner end of it, not just at
Yeah.
the hotel venue. Like, you really have had some experience from the planner side. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm lucky, my career has been very diverse in the different facets of events that I've worked in. I've always been event focused in my career, but I knew going into college that I've always loved weddings. Even when I was maybe in high school, I was really excited about weddings and wedding planning. I think I probably watched The Wedding Planner with J-Lo and was just enamored. So any
Weren't we
opportunity,
all?
yeah, I know. I will say it's a little less glamorous without the little headset and the heels, but
And Matthew McConaughey, let's
yeah,
not,
true. But I was really lucky. I spent about a year and a half as a senior event planner working, doing full service wedding and event planning. So, from when the couple books, so sourcing all of their vendors with them, working on budget, working on design, really bringing everything together, so from like paper goods to the dress, the hair and makeup, all the florals, just any decor they're doing. So very full service planning, really hands-on. And I loved that experience. It was just so much fun. It's really a very unique experience working that closely with your couples and getting to know them and just having that great relationship. Was very, very rewarding, but a lot of fun because I love weddings and I like social event planning. So a lot of creativity there, a lot of opportunity to work with them on, crafting that perfect day.
Oh, absolutely. So have you ever really thought about, like, quantifiably how many weddings you've been a part of at this point?
I have. I think at one point I probably had a very accurate number. I think now I'm probably somewhere between 150 and 200. I think some of them it's a little less involved if I was just helping out, and some of them much more involved if it was like full service or on the hotel side. But I think probably in the triple digits now. I will say I remember almost all my couples. If I sat with you long enough, I could probably write all their names down. Might take a while, but probably in the almost 200 range by now.
Wow, that's special. And to be part of so many big days,
Mhm.
I mean, it's a milestone event, a very important one. And obviously one of the most important parts of planning any wedding, if it's a destination wedding or a hometown wedding, it really doesn't make any difference. I definitely think it's a little bit, harder, and we'll get to some of this later on, to pick your venue from afar. But what do you think is the most important thing to look for couples in a wedding venue?
Yeah, I think it's like a twofold piece, right? So usually the first, you're looking for like aesthetically what aligns with what you're looking for the wedding. So everyone's style is going to be different, and what they're looking for in terms of just overall design. I think that starts at the venue level, and finding, if you really want a very luxurious space, a ballroom space is probably going to be aligned with that. So looking first, just what fits from an aesthetic perspective, I think is how a lot of couples start sourcing. And then I also think trying to find a venue that aligns with your planning needs is the biggest piece, right? So knowing if you're more comfortable, and you love DIY and you want to do a lot of the stuff on your own and, create all of your own tables, centerpieces, and the decor and all the paper goods and things like that. If you want a venue that's really just a blank space, or if you're wanting something that has some of that already paired with it, I think is a big piece of the planning process and of the venue selection process.
Well, and logistically speaking, if you're doing a ton of DIY and you're doing, say, like a drive market wedding where, someone's going from Indiana to Chicago and they can, make that drive and fill their car with all of the DIY details, or are they going somewhere across country?
Mhm.
Having things that are already on site for a destination wedding couple can be really, really helpful where you're not having to like bring in tons and tons of things because logistically that can sometimes be difficult, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's sometimes the most attractive piece about a venue and a space that has so many things included in it, especially if you're not local. The people on site, if they have like partners that they work with when it comes to like the decor, the floral, and almost every hotel is going to have a great list of like preferred vendors, and event managers have worked with so many different companies that they love working with, and they can refer that to you. And even though it's not included in your package there, it feels like it's very cohesive and you don't have to worry about doing all of that sourcing yourself. And then also you don't have to worry about bringing in all these items. And like if you're looking at, linens as an example, and you want different options, if you go to a venue where that's just one thing and it's standard, but the nice thing is there's so many different options you can work with within the hotel sphere, right? They can source anything for you. They can talk you through different colors and send pictures and swatches, and really just, the sky's the limit when you have a venue like that that's going to work with you with more inclusive options and more just on-site items and vendors that they're working with.
Now, let's talk about, I mean, you kind of perfect segue for talking about logistical aspects. That when you're selecting a venue, what are some of those things? Is it guest accessibility to things like airports or activities, nearby attractions? Like, when it comes to figuring out what venue is perfect for you, what are some of the things that you're like, you absolutely, as the couple, need to keep these things in mind?
Yeah, I think because weddings are so large now, often the majority of them are over 50 people. During COVID, it was a little smaller and it was a little easier on the logistics side of getting everyone where they need to be. But knowing that you're sometimes having a couple hundred people coming, the ease of your guest experience is such a big piece of the planning process. And it's something, unfortunately, that maybe you don't think of up front because you're so excited to focus on what you want and what that the day is going to look like. But knowing that if you set something up where it's easy to get to the airport, it's easy to get to public transportation, ride share accessible, you don't have to worry about guests calling you and asking you questions about how to get where they're going. If that's like the day before when you're at the rehearsal dinner, or, even in the morning of, just a venue in a space that has parking on site or easy accessibility to transportation. I also think the flow of the event is a big piece when you're looking at the venue, to make sure that it makes sense. If you have your ceremony on site as well as your reception and cocktail hour, seeing what that looks like from guests maybe moving from one space to another floor, if they're taking an elevator, an escalator, things like that. Just the flow of what the day looks like as well for you. If you're getting ready on site, looking for, a hotel that has a great suite so you can get ready and you don't have to worry about trying to figure out how to get all of your bridesmaids where they need to be, and making sure everyone's dressed on time for photos and things like that. I think all of those come together from a logistical perspective, as well as on the vendor side. And this, most of the time, the couples aren't dealing with this specifically, but themselves, if you have a planner, they are, but making sure that they can get in and out easily, and having a great team with like a good set standard of like loading dock instructions and getting in and out of the ballroom spaces, and having a team that works really seamlessly with your vendors is so important, because that cuts out any calls to you, any of that, being the middleman between the two. Usually the event manager just kind of takes charge and makes sure that all the vendors are where they need to be, and that's an easy process. So all of that from a logistical perspective is so important when you're looking at a venue and when you're looking at a hotel and deciding what makes the most sense for you.
Well, and I love your point about the flow, because I recently was in an event last October for a family member, and it was an anniversary party, and it was at this absolutely like five-star beautiful resort. And as beautiful as it was, the flow and signage for people to figure out where to go was like, huh? And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that when a couple is walking through a property with the event manager, they're maybe not paying attention to things like that. They're just looking at the space. They're just looking at, can I envision myself in that space, which is
Mm-hmm.
hugely important, like we've already talked about. But when it comes to the flow and figuring out where to go, especially if it's kind of a confusing property, what ended up happening, unfortunately, is there were loads of key members of the party that weren't there because they couldn't
Oh,
find it. And
yeah.
then the reception wasn't great. So people were having a hard time getting in touch with each other. So
Yeah.
it had some kind of starts and stops. There were a
Mm.
few people that were a little frustrated when they arrived
Yeah.
because they were late and it wasn't their fault. It was just
Yeah.
there wasn't great signage and there wasn't a great people would say, oh, we'll turn left here. And then they just, yeah. So
Hmm.
anyway, to your point, flow and things like that, just pay attention, listeners, when you are walking through a property and pay attention to things like that. Because as you're walking around with your event manager, you're not going to really be thinking about things like
Hmm.
that. So that's
Yeah.
definitely another one. Amenities and services. I
Hmm.
love a good hotel property with great
Yeah.
amenities. So let's talk about that for a second. Should
Yeah.
that be something that couples prioritize just in the aim of ensuring a seamless, enjoyable experience for them and their guests? I mean, where would you rank that as far as
Yeah.
priorities go?
I think that it's going to depend on the couple. So, like for some people, really maintaining, when you're looking at like a resort property specifically, really maintaining like a luxurious experience from start to finish of the whole weekend is very important. I feel like it's a lot more popular now to see wedding weekends versus just the wedding itself. You see like the rehearsal dinner and the rehearsal, and sometimes like a arrival party for guests, especially if it's a destination wedding where everyone's coming from out of town. You want to have like a good landing spot for them to really kick off the weekend, and then maybe a post wedding brunch the next day or like an on-site activity. So I think having a property that has all of that included, so if there's a spa there or like if there's a really nice pool or something like that, you can build that into your weekend. So I think, it depends on the couple, but for people who really want that immersive, really wedding focused weekend couple of days, that's so important to them. And I think that being able to have that so accessible as opposed to having to go off site for an event the day before and finding transportation, it's just all right there. You can just have everything in one spot and just really maximize the 3 days that you're with your family. And most of them maybe you don't see all the time. So it's just a nice experience to have that on site, and be able to utilize that while you're at the hotel.
Absolutely. And I know Marriott Bonvoy specifically is kind of known for their high impact getaways. So that just speaks perfectly to that. Now, what about for the couple? Because there is a big um I don't know if I'd call it a trend. I guess I'd call it a trend in like private homes and villas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for couples, they like have this idea of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have my own personal venue space, right? And I'm going to get to experience that for the entire weekend. What are some of the shortcomings for a private home or a villa in and things that maybe couples aren't really thinking about because they're just seeing the end result. They're seeing it mentally, they're seeing the setup, they're seeing themselves, splashing in the pool with their guests and things like that. What are some of the things that maybe are costly, number one, and number two are going to add work and stress to their plates because it's in a villa or a private home?
I think that you made a couple great points. When you're looking at it holistically, you see a beautiful finished product, and oftentimes you're seeing that from photos, and you don't, especially for couples that aren't part of the hospitality industry. You're not familiar with what planning an event looks like. You don't realize how much legwork is on the back end for that. And I think the wonderful thing about some of the beautiful villas or homes, they're stunning. I mean, it's such a unique look. But I think too, when we're talking from cost, and people often don't think about this because if you haven't worked in an event or if you don't work in the music industry, you're not aware, but like a DJ or a band is going to need specific ampage of power. And that likely is not even there. I mean, most places don't have dedicated circuits, for the band to plug into, and now you're looking at an issue where you're overloading just a regular outlet with all of their equipment. So to make sure you have that, you're bringing in a generator. And then if you're also looking at a place where heating and cooling is not part of the package, I think that too, when you're looking at outside spaces, you have to now bring in temperature control. So if that's a tent, if that's air conditioning units, heaters, things like that, depending on the location and time of year, that's very costly. Also, just from a table, chair, flatware, dishes perspective, it's likely that's not included there, and it's likely they don't have as many as you need to bring in tables and chairs and all of that. Logistically, it's a lot of legwork to find a rental venue or rental company that'll do it with you. And find one that'll set everything up. Often they'll drop it off, but they don't do setup. So now you're trying to figure out who can handle that. And then also, just again, from a cost perspective, that's very expensive. And the nice thing about looking at a venue that has all that included, you don't have to worry about the tables being set. You don't have to worry about any of that. You just show up and it's ready. With the private homes and villas, if you have a planner, they often are helping with a lot of that. But not many planners are doing a lot of the setting of everything. They might set out your personal items and, the place cards and if you have special, like a card box or, like a photo booth, things like that, they'll handle all of that. But the actual labor piece, you now need to source someone to do that too. So that's just another added cost.
Yes, yes. And I actually have a personal story to completely confirm all of what you just said. So my brother's first wedding, we had this really quaint historic home in Central Phoenix with a gigantic yard. I'm talking like an acre with big mature trees and gardens. It was gorgeous. But the house was really small. So to have 100, that's how many guests they had. To have 100 people in our house was just not happening. It was built in 1926. So we were questionable about the plumbing.
Yeah.
And they desperately wanted to get married in our yard. And we're like, you know what? If you want to get married in our yard, that's amazing. However, we called it the 3 Ps: potties,
Yeah.
parking, and what was the other one? Power.
Yeah.
And, in a 1926 house, we didn't have power, and they
Mhm.
wanted live music and they wanted a DJ. And, then there was the parking issue. I mean, we're in Central Phoenix, so the parking is not plentiful. And then the potty situation, 1926 house, I'll let you just imagine what that could look like, because I believe there was actually a movie. Well, I'm trying to remember what it was. Owen Wilson was in it. And there was something with, anyway, we won't get into that, but there was a movie that had this exact scene, and I watched it right before my brother's
Yeah.
wedding. And I thought, that's why we're going to need porta potties, because it was like,
Yeah.
to have 100 people go
Mhm.
through our house and use the bathroom, possibly 3 times during the
Mhm.
event. Like, that could end up being really, really
Mhm.
bad for everybody. And, the power was a huge deal, because when the band got there, and luckily we had gotten what we needed, but there were some issues with that and had to kind of make last minute arrangements. And it was very stressful. Their
Mhm.
reason for wanting to get married in our yard, it was a beautiful place, but it was more about, they thought it'd be less stressful and
Mhm.
it would be less money. And
Mhm.
they could not have been more wrong. The costly mistakes that were made. And I'm in the wedding industry, and I'm like, and I'm the little sister. So my brother
Yeah.
doesn't always like to listen to his little sister's
Yeah,
advice.
of
But I'm
course.
like, Natalia, maybe if you were the one, the
Yeah.
voice of reason, to been like, hello, because those
Yeah.
are the things I think just quickly get overlooked, but they are vitally important to the success of an event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. It's just so much extra work too. I think that's the thing. It's for some people that's not daunting to them, but for
Mhm.
a lot of people it is. It's just something you weren't even thinking about that now is a very large piece of the planning process that
Yes.
is not glamorous or fun the same way
No.
that like picking out florals and decor is. It is
Right.
really just a lot of logistical hard work. So it's definitely not for everybody.
Well, and I think that kind of brings in the point that when you're doing it at a hotel or resort venue, you don't have to think about those logistics.
Mm-mm.
They're done for you. So it's
Yeah.
like, that's just one thing you don't even have to stress about, like, at
Mhm.
all. Like, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to stress
Mm.
about it. They're going to have ample power. They're going to have
Yeah.
ample parking. They're going to have valets that are probably
Yeah.
going to park your car for you. You know what I mean? So there's so many things that I think couples in their romantic, wonderful minds, that if they've never planned an event before, don't necessarily know. And that's why we're talking about it. And
Yeah.
that's why it's so, so important. So let's talk for a second about, I know the Westin Michigan Avenue, you guys have a lots of different things that you
Mhm.
offer to your guests during their visit. So let's talk for a moment about just how you guys prioritize that complete experience,
Mhm.
and just kind of sparking that genuine connection among the guests.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a brand perspective too, Weston is very focused on wellness in all pillars, right? So you're eating well, you're sleeping well, you're moving well, all of that. There's just an overall outlook on wellness and health. And I think for a lot of people, that's very attractive to them and aligns with how they live their life naturally. So when we're thinking about, like you're talking about these, just the options that you have on site, our hotel specifically, like our GM and our director of ops, they're both marathoners and they love running. So they will take groups out for guided runs if that's something people are looking for.
Wow.
Which is really unique and, an exciting experience to get to go on, like a 3 mile run with the GM of a hotel in downtown
Love that.
Chicago.
Now that's
Um,
service, baby.
yeah, yeah. And it's just a nice, it's a nice way to see the city too. Where our proximity to Lakeshore, the Lakeshore Path, and that's 18 miles running up and down the lake in Chicago. It's just such a beautiful scape. No matter what time of year, you're going to see something beautiful, whether it's the summer and everything is green. If you're in the fall and you've got those fall colors, even in the winter, I think it's still just a beautiful spot to be. But it's just nice because you can incorporate that into your weekend and still, utilize what your natural life is and what your natural routine is. You can still bring that into your weekend. And I think a lot of brides, what I've seen in the past few years, it's very popular for them to do like a morning run or like a spin class together, or even like a yoga class the morning of the wedding. I don't know if that would be my cup of tea if I was in someone's wedding to go on a run in the morning. But I know that's something that brides love doing with each other. And, at our property specifically, you'd have the option to go on a run if you wanted, or take like a yoga class on site. We have Peloton bikes in our gym, things like that. So you can just incorporate your natural routine into that weekend, and it's still so impactful for you. And you feel like these might be 3 days where you're not doing anything else that's normal, right? Because most of the time you're probably not going to have this big wedding again. But you do get to incorporate that into your routine. And for the guests as well, they can always, if they want to go to the gym before or after, any event, they can, and they want to just keep that activity level up, or just see the city, and go out for a walk. If running is not your cup of tea, you can do that. And the hotel partners with you and finds ways to, really emphasize that. Some hotels have trainers on site. So it just really is a nice, just added perk of being in what feels like a very all-inclusive type of space.
Well, I think so much, at least anymore, it seems like a lot of couples are choosing to do like a wedding weekend where they really are kind of tasked with keeping people somewhat entertained. Usually they have obviously the wedding, the rehearsal, possibly a farewell brunch, but then there's times in between where like, what do I do for my guests? And so the fact that there's kind of built-in activities there that people can take advantage of, and then it also feels like for the guests, it's kind of their own vacation also, which I know is a big priority for couples. So that's really cool. Let's switch gears really quick and talk about weather. And I love that you talked about before with renting a private home or villa that you really have to think about temperature control. And I know it's not a popular topic to talk about, inclement weather and rain on a wedding day. I know everyone who has rain on their wedding day, it's good luck.
Yeah.
No one wants it. Let's get real. I think actually worse than rain is wind, quite honestly.
Yes.
I feel like that can actually be more destructive. So don't pray for wind on your wedding day. So let's talk about that. When it comes to selecting a venue, how important is the plan B, or how important should it be?
Yeah, I think it should be a top priority. I know like the places that you would have to be getting married where you can almost bank on perfect weather. And like I have a cousin who lives in Phoenix, and that is almost always perfect weather. They almost never get rain there. And
until it's not
downpoured about 10 minutes before her ceremony. So it just is one of those things that you want it to not be an issue, like you were saying, but it's just something you have to plan for.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at a space that has indoor outdoor space, that's the best of both worlds, right? Your plan A and your ideal plan is, let's have, the ceremony outside or cocktail hour outside on the terrace, and then we'll move inside for the reception. But you have to have a good backup space, and a good event manager and a good sales manager knows that during the booking and event planning process, right? And so they always have something as a backup for you, and can talk to past experiences, because if they've done enough events there, and whether it's just something that always happens, they know what they've done that worked really well in the past, and they can talk to like the best opportunity. And I think that it's something you hope, if you want an outside wedding and that's really what you're going for, you can do everything to plan for that to work. But the weather is the one thing that your planner and your event manager cannot control. So just having a good backup and having, equally beautiful space. Often places that have terrace space or outdoor space have beautiful ballrooms as well, or beautiful indoor space. But just having that and being okay with that too is your plan. I think that's the hard part. When I've had brides that were set on doing something outside, us having a realistic conversation beforehand. Okay, we have to talk about what happens just in case. And I've never had someone give me pushback if we had to move to moving inside. There's, especially in Chicago, right there, the weather can be beautiful one moment and crazy the next. I had a few weddings in June a couple years ago that had tornado watches, and
Oh,
their plan was, yeah, their plan was to fully go off site, take photos, come back. And I went into the hair and makeup room and I just said, we just need to talk about what we're doing with outside. And she looked at me and said, I shouldn't go outside, should I? And I said, no, if you're okay with it, I don't think you should. But we had a good backup plan, and we had discussed it, a few weeks prior. And you can look at the weather when you're getting closer. And if it looks like you need to be ready and have the backup space just set with chairs, even just in case, I think that's the best way to go about it from a logistical perspective. And also, you don't want to get heartbroken, right, when it's 10 minutes before the ceremony and it's just not going to happen. You have to at least have a good idea what you want to do and be at peace with that idea that might be how it goes. But like I said, most places that have indoor outdoor space, both are just as pretty and can be designed just as beautifully. And they're used to that too, right? If there's outdoor space, they've seen everything. So knowing when it's time to make the call to move indoors, they're usually pretty good about that.
yeah. And honestly, I think sometimes the unexpected brings a level of
Yeah.
energy. And oftentimes for the visual team, the photographer, the videographer, they have sometimes more control when it's inside.
Yeah,
They can bring in
definitely.
extra lighting elements if, let's
Mhm.
say, it's in a darker space or something
Yeah.
like that. There's so many tricks up their sleeves these days
Mhm.
that I'm
Yeah.
astonished at some of the photography I've seen in situations where it's like, oh, we just got hurricane watch and it's
Yeah.
looking bad outside. You know what I mean? Like that kind
Yeah.
of thing happens all the time.
Yeah.
And if you're working with really true professionals,
Mhm.
and the couple can kind of rest assured that everyone, their goal is to make sure this wedding day happens, and it happens with the most limited stress,
Yep.
and for the couple to really ultimately get what they want. I mean, everyone in the wedding industry, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's like, I don't care. I've
No, me
I've
either.
never, in 20 years in business, I have never met a wedding professional, no matter what, part of the business they're in. If it's a florist, if it's a stationer, if it's an event manager, it doesn't matter. Everyone cares. They give a rip. And that's really
Yeah.
important. So just know that, listener, just know that
Yes.
everyone really cares about having the best experience. Okay, again, switching gears on you. I know I'm doing a lot of like switching
No,
gears,
no,
but
it's
these are
okay.
really important topics and they're not all super sexy, but they're so important.
Yeah.
Let's talk about room blocks.
Yes.
Um, Room blocks can be a major perk of having a venue that offers
Yep.
accommodations like a hotel or resort,
Yep.
but not all room blocks, or not all couples even really think about the room block and how it can really work for their guests. But also there's different types of room blocks. Can you
Mhm.
kind of explain
Yeah.
like the general, 5-minute version of what that
Yeah.
looks like, and the benefits and the differences, if you will?
For sure. It's so important. I think that was one of the best pieces about when I moved into full service planning as a job. I had already worked in hotels, so I already had that great experience of being on site, and knowing what it's like when you're contracting a room block. So it was just great, advice that I had for my couples. But I think it's so important to make sure that you have great room block options for your guests, right? So the way I always approached it with my couples was, let's look at two different options, sometimes three if you as the couple don't want to stay where your guests are staying, which is very valid. I think that people feel bad doing that, but you are interacting with them all weekend long. You are seeing them all day at the wedding, all night at the wedding, and sometimes you just want to have a moment to yourself. So oftentimes I'd have couples, pick one hotel that's a more, economical option, right? For someone who has a family and they need maybe two rooms, or they just really are not looking to make it more than just, they need a room to sleep in. We look for a good option that fits and is more budget friendly. And then we look for kind of like a mid-tier option where if someone wants to make it, a little bit more of a vacation for themselves, right? So it's maybe a property that has like a spa on site or like a really nice restaurant on site. And then if the couple are staying somewhere else, usually they're staying at a luxury property and they're popping for a really nice suite that night. So just trying to find, different types of hotels, I think is the first thing I look at when we're looking for room blocks. And then knowing the difference between a room block that's a courtesy room block. And the great thing about Marriott is most properties, again, pending dates and time of year, right? If there's like a citywide conference going on or something like that, it's going to make it a little different. But most of the time they'll give you up to 20 rooms a night with no financial commitment. So you won't have any attrition. And
Are you
attrition
serious? I did not
Mhm.
know that. That is
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing.
Again, it
That's
depends,
amazing.
right? So like if it's peak season and then there is a lot of other business going on in the city at the same time, you're probably not going to get that many, but a lot of hotels will do that for you depending on the time of year that you're looking and the weekends that you're looking. But with no attrition, meaning, if you have 10 rooms reserved and only one of them books, you are not financially committed to paying for anything. A room block with attrition is great if you're someone who's going to cover the cost of those rooms anyway. Sometimes people pay for family or they pay for like certain guests, especially with a destination wedding. I think I've seen that a lot more where they'll opt to pay for like 10 rooms for their closest family. Then attrition would be great for you, right? Because you're going to cover the cost anyway, and you're going to guarantee that those rooms will book. So two different types of room blocks. Usually those are the types that you're looking at, but a huge perk about room blocks with any Marriott property is you're going to get Bonvoy points for your guest staying. So if you don't have an account, you should sign up for an account. It's free points. It gets you, free nights along the way once you, gain up those points and gain the status. But you get points for your guest booking on your block if you put your account number down when you sign. And then it's just so nice that you're not spending anything if it's a courtesy block, right? But you're benefiting from guest booking under your block. And then it's easy too for like a transportation perspective and from a safety perspective at the end of the night. Again, not a sexy topic, but trying to figure out where people are going and how they're going to get home if they've been drinking. The ease of just walking out of one room and going to an elevator and going up to your guest room is probably the safest way to go home at the end of the night.
Yes.
And you don't have to worry about transportation for guests. You don't have to worry about, parking or anything like that from the end of the night. Same with you. If you need to take something up to your room, or like if you have a spill on your dress or something, you can just run right up to your suite and deal with that while you're there. But it really is, room blocks are so beneficial and so important, especially for destination weddings, because if no one lives there and no one's local, they need to stay in a hotel. And so helping them by offering a couple different options is great. Put them on your wedding website, put instructions about how to get to and from the airport, to and from, public transportation, just have that all there for the guests. And then they can look too, right? And they can see the different rates and they can see what aligns best with them. And then if they have like a certain affinity for a brand and they love, like if they love Westin as a brand, then there's Westin in your options for their block, like, oh, we're going to stay there because I want the room with the Peloton bike or things like that, right? So it's just, there's so many benefits to getting room blocks, and Marriott's great with the courtesy blocks too. It's just such a good option. And anytime I'd be looking at blocks with couples and like, all right, let's look at a couple Marriott hotels, because that's just, you're going to get your best option there.
Definitely. And I think too, for the guests, I've too many times to count between destination I do as a business and then also my own personal experience having my own destination wedding and being part of many different destination weddings. The room block is always, not always, but oftentimes it's kind of an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it becomes a priority when couples or guests are calling the couple saying,
Yep.
hey, where do I stay? Hey,
Mm-hmm.
how much is this place a night? Because they're looking at the rack rate online or they're looking at Google or whatever, and come to find out that the group rate may be different than what the rack rate is.
Yep.
And so usually it becomes a priority when that conversation happens,
Yep.
maybe the second or third or fourth time. And it can cause couples a lot of stress if they don't think about it ahead of time. If they've got a well-laid plan, like you said, oh my gosh, you took the words right out of my mouth. Put it on your wedding website. Here are the
Mm-hmm.
room blocks that we have of different price points, because not everybody, has the same finances.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, someone is only coming in for 2 nights instead of 4, or maybe they're spending an entire week, or,
Mm-hmm.
maybe their price point is this and someone else is this. And,
Yep.
those things, and thinking through them and kind of having a preemptive strike, if you will, by
Mm-hmm.
having that conversation with your venue. And especially if it's, a Marriott property, the fact that you can put it part of, have it as part of your loyalty program. And then, you're getting freebies, they're getting
Yeah.
points, whatever. I mean, everybody's winning in
Yeah.
that scenario. So I think it is a really not sexy topic, but it's an important one.
It
And it's
is.
one that I think if you think about it ahead of time, you can save yourself a ton of stress in the
Yep.
long run.
Yep.
And happy guests equal a happy couple, because there's
Yes, for
nothing worse
sure.
than just hearing everyone
Yeah.
going, why is it this way? Or why is it that
Yeah.
way? And so that's great. As far as scouting trips,
Yes.
what's your feeling on, does a couple have to have a scouting trip if they're doing a destination wedding for their venue specifically, or do
Mhm.
you feel like it's something they can avoid? And if they can avoid it, what are some ways that they can kind of make sure that they're getting what they really want in the end?
Yeah. I think again, that's gonna align with the type of couple, right? If you have the time and the funds to take a trip, sometimes that's even like a nice, part of the planning process to get excited about the wedding.
Yeah.
That's a fun thing to do. But if you live in New York and you're getting married in Chicago, maybe you're too busy and you don't have time. And I think the benefit of working, with a hotel is they have so many resources on site and so many staff on site that are ready to help you during that sourcing and scouting process, that you could get away with not coming and not seeing it beforehand. I've had a lot of couples like that, when I've worked in hotels where they lived out of state and they have family that lives in Chicago, and that's why they picked a Chicago venue, where they met in Chicago and they want to get married there. But the hotel staff and your sales manager, your event manager, depending on what process you're in with the booking process, they often are happy to call you on Zoom or Teams or anything like that and do like a video walkthrough of the space with you. They'll record the space if if you want that. If there's weddings taking place before yours, they'll take as many pictures as you want. I think it's really, being able to work with venue spaces that are so knowledgeable about their space is so beneficial, right? And so, like, we were chatting earlier about like the private homes and villas. If it's someone's private residence, they might not have time to do that, or they might not be on site if there's another wedding taking place, a week or like 2 weeks before, when you're looking at contracting. So you might miss out on that opportunity. But with the hotels, there's always someone there, right? That they never close. They're open 24 hours. There's always someone there that can help you with that. And they, because they're always on site and always in the space, they know what works best, and they can talk you through every layout, every scenario. Happy to send diagrams for you to look at with different layouts. And again, if you're working with a planner that's local, I think that helps a lot too. They're always happy to come and take a look at the space for you, or if it's a space they've worked before, they know the ease of getting in and out, and what the flow looks like. But working with a hotel that has like a great team in the events and sales side, they're so happy to do that for you. And it's I've seen so many contracts get signed after a Zoom call and like a Zoom walkthrough, and site tour alerts will come out and it'll say in parentheses Zoom site tours, and they're just walking the space with their phone. But there's so many different options if you can't make it out to where you're looking to book your wedding. Like I said, I think if you can, it's such a fun experience and it gets you excited and it really kicks off the process. But that's just, unfortunately, with work schedules and everything, that's not doable for everybody. So for people
Right.
who it's not doable, it's definitely not the end of the world. You have so many options for still being able to have a destination wedding and see the space, maybe not in person, but you'll still get to see it.
God bless technology.
Yeah.
Because when I
For
was a
sure.
destination bride, oh gosh, like almost 20 years, 19 years this year, they didn't have those options. Zoom
Mhm.
wasn't, I don't even think Zoom was in like beta testing yet. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's come a long way. And when a couple decides to do a scouting trip, what are some of the things, Natalia, that you feel are really important for them to kind of hone in on while they're physically at the venue?
Yeah, I think again, this goes to when we were talking about flow of the event, right? I think from the arrival, the moment you arrive to the moment you check out, look at it through the eyes of someone who's never been there before.
Mm,
So treat it like you've never been to this property and this is the first time you're going there, like probably many of your guests will be, because like you said, happy guests make for a better wedding. Unfortunately, you do hear from them a lot if things don't
mm,
go well.
sure
So
do.
just look at it from that perspective, right? And if you've never been there before, it's your first time too. And look at it through the eyes of like, if I was Auntie whoever, and I need to come and make sure this is easy for me to check in, and if there's valet out front to help with your car or a bellman to help with your bags, just things like that, and taking note of what the property has to offer and the ease of check-in. If there's a Bonvoy desk for people that are Bonvoy members, and then the standard check-in desk, just noticing the difference, if there's amenities in the lobby, just things like that. I think that's a big piece of when you're doing your scouting trip. And then when you meet with the team that you're going to be working with, if it's in the contracting phase, you probably wouldn't meet with an event manager, but you definitely meet with your sales manager. And they can walk through the space with you, and they can talk about different options. I think, again, when we're talking about indoor outdoor space, that's a great time just to kick off that conversation too, and just know from a holistic perspective what this day and what the event is going to look like. And I think in terms of like asking great questions, checking about bathrooms on the event floor, making sure it's easy for guests to get to, asking what they've done in terms of layout before. They usually come with diagrams to show you if the room is open and clean and clear. It's hard sometimes to envision what it looks like when it's set. But if you ask ahead of time, like, could we come on a Saturday during setup and see what the space looks like when it's set for a wedding our size? That's a great question to ask. Not everyone can do that, depending on what the group would like or what the wedding would like that's in house. But if that's an option, it's great to see the space even half set, so you can just imagine what it would look like with what you're looking for too. But really treat it like it's your first time being there, and look at it through the eyes of your guests, and the ease of the experience, I think, is the biggest piece when you're looking at different spaces from like a holistic arrival perspective.
Yeah. And to your point about physically going in the space, if it isn't set up, and let's say there isn't a wedding that you can physically walk through, if that's their size or whatever, oftentimes, and I'm sure you can attest to this personally, you may have like an iPad or a bunch of different, a device filled with images of weddings that are set up. So it's almost like you can stand in the space and say, here, look at this iPad of all like 20 beautiful weddings that were 120 people or whatever their size might be. And then that may help too, just kind of visualize that space, because it's so funny. Real estate, I feel like, is very similar to weddings, right? So it's like, there's a house around the corner from us that's been sitting and sitting and sitting. And I'm like, the minute I walked through it, I said, it's because it's not staged. People can't see the space and their own things in it if it's this blank space. Not that many people are super visual and that's a lot of times why people feel the need to hire a wedding planner and things of that nature, is they may not have the capability to be visual. So if the event space has, hey, here are the beautiful images of 20 other couples who did something similar, that sometimes can help get them there too.
Absolutely.
As far as challenges go, and this is really critical for destination wedding couples, do you have any tips on like identifying and maybe mitigating potential challenges as far as a venue goes when they're planning their weddings?
Yeah, I think the first one and the biggest one for me, just in general, is good communication, right? So getting a wedding website, and it's so simple. There are so many platforms you can use,
so many.
and you can make them, password locked, right? So if someone searched your name, they wouldn't be able to find it unless you gave them a password, or you can make them public, whatever feels best for you and your guests. But just having one centralized spot for all of your information is so beneficial. So you don't get those calls asking, hey, where should I stay? Or, what's the easiest way to get from the airport? I think having a good resource for your guests to use is so important. I think that helps mitigate any of the calls that you're going to be getting throughout the planning process or on the weekend, which is such a big piece that I've seen in my experience. I've had people call and say, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. And it's the night before and we're about to start the rehearsal. And it's frustrating because they're all adults and you would think like it'd be so self-explanatory, but it's just one of those things that it's not. And I think when people are going somewhere new, having more information for them is really beneficial. I also think really tapping into the resources of the hotel and knowing that so many hotels have such tenured staff. I know my property specifically, some of the people who've worked there have been there for 20 years, and knowing the ins and outs of the property like the back of their hand really helps mitigate issues and mitigate any challenges that pop up. I think trusting the team where you're getting married and trusting the people who, like we said earlier, who really do have your best interests at heart. They're advocates for you. They're always happy to ask a question or talk you through a scenario. I think that just tapping into the resources there and knowing that they want ultimately the best end result for everybody, right? It's in everybody's best interest that this is the best day for you and that it goes so smoothly. Really tapping into them and utilizing them, and knowing that, like, if you're chatting with a banquet manager about what makes the most sense for where the bar should go, like, they have done a million events, they do one every single night, they know where the bar should go. And if you have a different idea and you want to chat through that, they're always willing to talk through that with you. But really trusting the team that you're working with, I think, is so important, especially if you're not looking to hire a planner and you're not someone who is part of the industry. They if you've been to events, people always say, I went to a wedding that was really bad, and they can list reasons. But when you go to a good wedding, you often don't realize what it takes for that to go smoothly. But the people on the back end do. And they know that putting this in this spot of the room makes the best sense for the card box. Everyone's going to see it. People aren't going to ask where it is. Putting the guest book here is the best spot to put it. Everybody will sign it. It won't feel like they forgot about it. Just those little things and really trusting your team, I think, is so important, paired with good communication with your guests and anybody you're working with, I think is two really good ways to get ahead of any issues.
Yeah. Natalia, can I have you on every episode? Because I literally feel like my neck is getting sore from nodding, like listening to you. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Okay, listener, I need you to go back and listen to this twice because there are so many golden nuggets of like helpful tips and so, so good. Okay. And I appreciate your time. So I'm going to wrap it up with one last question for you. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners? Anything like kind of fun and sexy, maybe not logistic, with logistic challenges, but something fun and sexy to share?
Yeah, absolutely. We touched on it a little bit ago when we were talking about room blocks and Bonvoy points and all of that. But I think the benefits of Marriott Bonvoy it's just endless, right? Especially when you're planning a wedding. So like I said, if you don't have an account, sign up for one. It's free. And when you're getting ready to sign and you're getting ready to, get your room block and the wedding and all of that, you're going to get points for both the rooms and your food and beverage spend. So that's free points back to you that can be translated into like a free night stay or an upgrade at a property. And I think the biggest thing, and I think this is more popular now, is waiting a little bit to take a honeymoon. Most people, I feel like, don't go the next day. That was popular a while back. And a lot of people would get married on Saturday, leave on Sunday. I feel like now people are waiting. If you wait just like 10 days, you can actually use those points that you earned for your honeymoon. So I think that's such a big perk of Bonvoy and, having a wedding at a Marriott hotel. And like we said, the portfolio is huge. There's like 30 plus different brands. So if there's something for everybody, no matter what you're looking for, no matter where you're looking, Marriott will have an option for you. And I think that being able to maximize your spend and getting something for your spend, that's like a win-win situation because you're going to spend the money anyway.
Yeah.
You might as well get something for it. And I also have had guests in the past get a Marriott credit card because you get extra points for opening a credit card and you can use those points too. So it really is just maximizing your points and getting as much as you can because you will end up spending the money anyway and getting something for it, right? That feels good. I mean, obviously you're getting a wonderful wedding and a beautiful weekend with your friends and family, but getting something that you can actually apply to a honeymoon or just a trip, if you take an anniversary trip, things like that, you'll just get points for everything that you're spending on site. And it really is so beneficial.
Oh, I love it. I mean, why wouldn't you? That'd be
right.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? With all the flexibility, the added bonuses, it's like, making it rain with points. Come on. Let's go on that honeymoon. I want to go.
Yeah.
Where are we going? Anyway, well, Natalia, thank you so, so much. This is like, I just feel like it's just been such a great conversation. If anybody wants to learn a little bit more, you can go to experiencemarriott.com/weddings. And Natalia, thank you. Thank you for being my guest today. And if you want to follow, subscribe, rate this podcast, whatever you want to do, that would be great. You can follow us at destinationido.com online, and also Destination I Do is our social media handle. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.